must take every reasonable step to ensure an individual whose sex is opposite to the sex designated for a multiple occupancy private space does not enter the private space. This includes public schools and universities. Councilmember Mike Siegel submitted the resolution, which points to a May of 2024 resolution the council passed that says, quote, "It is the policy of the city to support and protect the health, welfare, and safety of individuals who identify or are perceived as LGBTQIA+, through the vigorous enforcement of hate crime and anti-discrimination laws and providing other forms of support." The new law allows the Texas Attorney General to investigate complaints and for individuals to sue local governments over violations they believe occurred. Mary Elizabeth Castle of Texas Values.
So what they're doing doesn't violate the Texas Women's Privacy Act, right? Because the Texas Women's Privacy Act is definitely about protecting women in those vulnerable locker rooms, showers, restrooms, where someone can enter and create a threat to them. At the same time, though, Austin City Council is proposing that they'll spend close to $10 million to redo all these bathrooms. And this is just a waste of taxpayer dollars because all they could do is simply follow the law.
She said Texas Values sent a letter to all public state colleges and universities detailing how the new law should be followed. She added if someone believes that schools are not complying with the law, they can contact Texas Values. I'm Robert Thornton.
Incoming New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani has appointed his fire department commissioner. Lillian Bonsignor has no experience as a firefighter, but she is an open lesbian, leading critics to call this a DEI hire.
I know what the firefighters need, and I can translate that to this administration who's willing to listen.
Mamdani takes office in the new year. In final news, journalist Liz Collin of Alpha News says taxpayers in Minnesota want something done about Somali-led fraud.
They're seeing more and more of this. How Governor Walz is acting seems pretty telling as well. He seems to be making some maneuvers now as he runs for re-election for a third term in Minnesota. But I can tell you there is a petition that's been going around for just the last couple of weeks. Tens of thousands of people have now signed it, demanding that he resign in the wake of this fraud. So clearly a story where there is more to come.
For more on Minnesota fraud and other news of the day, visit our website, afn.net. Thanks for listening.
If we lose this cultural war, we're going to have a hedonistic, humanistic society.
Discover the story of the culture warrior Don Wildman and how he went head-to-head with Hollywood, Playboy, the homosexual agenda, and the Disney empire. The movement Don started paved the way for Christians to boldly stand for truth and righteousness in a hostile culture. Watch Culture Warrior today for free. Visit culturewarrior.movie.
Welcome to Real Truth for Today with Pastor Jeff Schreve, Senior Pastor of First Baptist Church in Texarkana, Texas. Now, here's Pastor Jeff.
Well, good morning and welcome to Real Truth for Today. It is Monday, December 29th. Christmas time is over, Christmas 2025. Now we're looking to the new year. I hope you had a wonderful Christmas time. We did at my household and at First Baptist Texarkana. We had a great Christmas Eve service. The place was filled. We seat 2382. We have seats in the worship center, so we know exactly how many seats we have. With pews, you know, it's kind of an accordion. You can cram a lot of people in there, and so the capacity can change a little bit depending on the people. But with seats, you know what you have, and so we had a big group, and so beautiful. We always do the candles at the end, lighting the candles and turning off the lights, and just seeing all that around the worship center is quite a sight. And so a wonderful Christmas day for the Schreve family. And then the next day, the day after Christmas, we drove to Houston to see my mom. My mom is 97 years old, and so we had a big gathering. I come from a family of six kids total. I'm number 5 out of 6. And so all my brothers and sisters, except my youngest sister, was there at my mom's house. And so Debbie and I, when we come in, we normally put on a big dinner, and we had Mexican food from Los Cucos. If you live in the Houston area, you know about Los Cucos. and great Mexican food. And so we just had a fun time, a wonderful time with my grandsons, my middle daughter Amy and Travis. They live there in the Woodlands, just about 30 minutes from my mom. And so Jack, Chase, and Drew. Jack is 4, Chase is 2, and Drew is 10 months. So we had a great time with those little guys, and they just keep us laughing. And it was a wonderful Christmas time. Got back yesterday afternoon, got a lot done, helped Debbie tear down all the Christmas stuff. Debbie is once she gets her mind set on something, boy, we're going to do it. And we pulled all the containers out of the shed, and we packed up all the stuff and got it all put up, and so she feels much, much better about it. Well, all right. I hope you had a wonderful time. And this week, the 2 weeks, the Christmas week and New Year's week, it's kind of a dead time for our country. Many businesses are slower. People are on vacation, things like that. But there's always things going on at the church and things going on in our country. Now, wanted to talk to you today about righteous indignation. Do you know about righteous indignation? Righteous indignation is a justified response to sin, to evil, to injustice. Psalm 7, verse 11 says, God is a righteous judge and a God who has indignation every day. That word indignation means to show anger. Now, we know that anger in our lives can be a big problem. There's righteous anger and there's unrighteous anger. Now, unrighteous anger gets us in big time trouble. That destroys relationships with people. But righteous anger is what God has, because God is holy, holy, holy. God doesn't ever blow his stack and then have to say, oh, well, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have gotten so angry. I behaved badly here. No, God gets angry at sin. You and I should get angry at sin. Now, in the life of Jesus, the two situations that really pop up as you study his life in the gospel accounts are the cleansing of the temple. That happened at the beginning of his ministry. John tells us that in John chapter 2. And it happened at the end of his ministry after the triumphal entry. He cleanses the temple. And this is what it says in Matthew's gospel. It says, and Jesus entered the temple and drove out all those who were buying and selling in the temple and overturned the tables and the money changers and the seats of those who were selling doves. And he said to them, it is written, my house shall be called a house of prayer, but you are making it a robber's den, a den of thieves. These chief priests were ripping off the people. They had set up their animals, their business, so to speak. They had the specific money you had to exchange in order to give your temple offerings. They had the animals that you had to get from them. You could bring your own animal for sacrifice at the Passover, but they would probably reject it because you didn't buy one of their animals, and they were sold at exorbitant prices. And so they were ripping off the people, and they were taking the area. The temple itself is not big. When we think of the temple that was there in the Old Testament, Solomon's temple or Herod's temple there in the New Testament times, we think this huge place. Well, it's a huge footprint that's the Temple Mount. But the temple itself, what is under roof, is very, very small. But you have these courts. You have the court of the Gentiles, which is a huge area, and that's where the Gentiles could come. And those who were wanting to seek the Lord, they could come to the court of the Gentiles if you weren't Jews. And then you have the court of the women and the court of the men, and then you get in closer and closer to the temple. Then it becomes more and more restricted. Then it's the court of the priests. You have the the holy place. Only the priests can go in the holy place. And then you have the very innermost part of the temple, the Holy of Holies, and only the high priest can go in there, and he only goes in there once a year on the Day of Atonement. In the Holy of Holies, that was where the glory of God was, the presence of God there in the ark, there at the Ark of the Covenant. And so they called it the Bazaar of Annas. Annas was the high priest. And this place where they were selling animals and for sacrifices and exchanging money, that was all done at the court of the Gentiles. And they turned the court of the Gentiles into a robber's den as they were ripping off the people. And Jesus got very, very angry at that. And he cleanses the temple at the beginning of his ministry, John chapter 2, and at the end of his ministry. And so we see in the life of the Lord Jesus righteous indignation, and righteous indignation over fraud and over setting up a stumbling block to people who would want to encounter the Lord. The religious leaders. Religion always does that. It muddies the waters. And these guys were enriching themselves off the backs of the people. The chief priests and the Sadducees. The Sadducees were really the ones who controlled the temple area, and they were in cahoots with Rome. And so Rome let them do what they did because the Sadducees supported Roman occupation. It was sickening. They had this sick relationship. Now, they didn't like Pilate, but they wanted to play ball with Rome because it was good for them. Remember what they said about Jesus? If we let him go on like this, then Rome is going to come in and take away our place. We can't have that. That would be terrible because we have a great place, we have a great arrangement with Rome right now, and Jesus is threatening that. And so Jesus was angry with them. Now, if you see and read the news, there are things happening every day that should make you angry as a Christian. The evil that is done, the sinful acts that are done, the injustices that are done, and the blatant fraud that takes place. Now, what has been uncovered just recently is the blatant fraud in Minnesota. And if you've been following, Nick Shirley, who's just some YouTube guy, some guy in his early 20s, he said, well, I'm going to take this on. None of the big major news networks were taking on the fraud in Minnesota. And so he starts taking it on, and he starts interviewing people, and he has an informant named David. They didn't give his last name, but he produced a 42-minute video where he and David are going to these supposedly places of business that are child care centers and things like that are getting millions of dollars from the government for their services, but they don't offer any services. It is unbelievable. And so he goes to these places. The windows are blackened. There are no cars. They're supposed to be open 7 days a week from 7 to 10. No kids. David has all his information from the university or from the government of Minnesota and their website, and they list how much money these places are getting, and it's millions and millions of dollars every year. This fraud that's taking place in Minnesota, it's not just millions of dollars, it's not just tens of millions of dollars, it's not just hundreds of millions of dollars, it's billions of dollars. It's been going on for about 10 years. And it's primarily coming from the Somalis. They've made arrests. I looked this up, and they've made arrests. 78 individuals have been charged in the Feeding Our Future case, which was a big fraud case. And most of those, it was 89% of these arrests have been Somalis. And so Nick Shirley, he's just saying, well, let's see what we can find. He does this in an afternoon, just goes from place to place to place, and nobody will talk to him. Nobody's there. No kids are there. I mean, it's just sickening. And he says in the video, they're continuing to get money from the state, from the feds, because, it's just in the system. And, who's ever minding the store is not doing a very good job, to say the least. And one of the things they bring up in the video is people are afraid to blow the whistle and throw a flag and say, hey, you guys are fraudsters, because they don't want to be called a racist and they don't want to be called an Islamophobe. And so, hey, they throw that at you immediately. Well, you're just a racist. You're coming after us because we're Somalis. You're coming after us because we're Muslim. You're an Islamophobe. Oh, I don't want somebody to call me that, so I'll just back off. Tim Walz has doubled down. He's the governor of the state. And so when you have massive, massive fraud taking place over years and years and years, and you're the guy that holds, you sit in the seat of the top seat in the state, well, the buck stops with you. Well, this is what he had to say about it.
So this is what happens when your own federal government wages war against you. This is what happens when they target communities for their own benefit. This is what happens when they scapegoat. And this is what happens when they no longer hide the idea of white supremacy, when you hear the Vice President of the United States talk about now white people won't have to apologize for being white. That's never happened once in my whole life. And I think everybody in this room knows what they're doing. So we're here today to say enough of this. We're here today to stand that Minnesota will protect their neighbors.
So he's saying, hey, they're just being smeared and we're going to protect them, and nobody has ever had to apologize for being white. I don't know where that guy has been since the days of BLM, but many people were bowing down, apologizing for being white. It's sickening. Nobody should apologize for whatever the color of your skin is. That's the way God made you, and God made us that way for a reason and for a purpose, and we need to live to give Him glory. Well, you're listening to Real Truth for Today, and I'm your host, Pastor Jeff Schreve, and we're talking about the subject of righteous indignation. Are you not angry, in a righteous way, angry when you see people being defrauded right before your very eyes? It should make you angry. Well, we're up against a break. We'll be right back. Don't go away.
Hello, this is Walker Wildman, CEO of AFA Action. I'm convinced this coming year will determine whether the movement back towards Christian values in our government will be sustained, or will it fade? Which will it be? Who will prevail in the 2026 elections? Who will win the court battles? Who will advance godly values? You and other AFA Action supporters must play a part. This is why AFA Action has a supporter that has offered $200,000 to double the year-end gifts from faithful Christians like you. We need to impact Congress and state governments all around the country. We need to impact the courts. And lastly, we need to impact the 2026 midterm elections. As you've seen, the other side is playing for keeps. The woke radicals will spend and they will do virtually anything to destroy our Christian heritage and foundation, and they will succeed unless we stop them. To help double the impact of our challenge, go to afaaction.net, afaaction.net.
Washington Watch with Tony Perkins.
You look at 3 of the 4 justices there in Colorado that voted to remove him from the ballot. They all came from Ivy League schools that had been created as divinity schools. What a picture of the apostasy in America when it comes to the church.
Stay informed with Tony Perkins and his guests on Washington Watch, weekdays at 4 p.m. Central on AFR, or catch up anytime with the podcast at afr.net. Women going through the ordeal of infertility or miscarriage experience pain and loneliness that are too much for words. The Hannah's Heart Conference, January 30th and 31st, 2026, at Hope Church in Tupelo, Mississippi, can help bring hope and encouragement with biblical teaching from Jane Johnson and worship led by Phil King. For more information or to register, visit afr.net/HHC 2026. afr.net/HHC 2026.
The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Hey, it's Michael Woolworth with Bible League International, and what a joy and comfort those words bring when we read those in our own Bible in the early part of John's Gospel. He tells us that God made good on His promise to give us Jesus, right, who's with us and He's for us. Oh, the joy to read that around our dinner tables and in front of our fireplaces around Christmas time, but to think there's Bible-less believers around the world who have been denied God's Word. They've never been able to read the Christmas story for themselves, but oh, the joy of thinking of many Christians who will have that privilege this year. AFR listening family, we want to bless 7,000 Bible-less believers around the world this Christmas. You've done it for 3,000. We've got 4,000 to go. So at $5 a Bible, $100 sends 20, $500 blesses 100 waiting believers. Would you pray about it and call 800-YES-WORD? 800-YES-WORD. That's 800-YES-WORD. Or give it sendbiblesnow.org. Sendbiblesnow.org. And God bless you for Gary this Christmas season.
This is Real Truth for Today. Podcasts of the program are available on the podcast page at afr.net. Now, back to Pastor Jeff Schreve.
Welcome back to the program. Pastor Jeff here. We're talking about righteous indignation, getting angry over things you should be angry about. God is a righteous judge, the Scripture says, and a God who has indignation every day. Now, John chapter 2, the Scripture says this: the Passover of the Jews was near, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. And he found in the temple those who were selling oxen and sheep and doves, and the money changers seated at their tables. And he made a scourge of cords. He made a whip. And he drove them all out of the temple with the sheep and the oxen. And he poured out the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. And to those who were selling the doves, he said, "Take these things away. Stop making my Father's house a place of business." His disciples remembered that it was written, "Zeal for your house will consume me." Now, you ask yourself the question, why did the religious leaders, why did they hate Jesus so much? Why were they so focused on getting him out of the way and killed? It's because he was messing with their business. He was messing with everything. He was exposing them for the frauds that they were. And the emperor had no clothes, and he called them out on it. You people honor me with your lips, but your heart is far away from me. But in vain do you worship me, teaching as doctrines the precepts of men. And he would just expose them. Matthew 23, he just eviscerates them, where he says, "Woe to you, scribes, Pharisees, hypocrites." And over and over and over again, he just eats them up one side and down the other, rips them apart. And all of it is true. The Lord is convicting them of their sin. They knew it was true, everything he was saying, but they hated him for it. As the Apostle Paul said, "Have I become your enemy by telling you the truth?" Jesus said to his brothers in John chapter 7, "The world cannot hate you, but it hates me because I testify against it that its deeds are evil." Now, we're applying the situation of righteous indignation that anyone who has a sense, a moral compass of this is right and this is wrong should feel when you see blatant sin taking place right before your eyes, especially the sin of theft. You know, when people steal from you and you're watching them steal from you, and you say, "Hey, wait a minute, time out here. This is not yours." And especially when it comes from people who come into our country, we don't have to let them into our country, but by the goodness of our heart as Americans, we let them into our country. We give them a place to live. And these people figure out how to game the system, how to, take things that don't belong to them, and they steal from you, and they steal from me, and they steal from us as they defraud the state of Minnesota and the nation of funds that are supposed to go to help feed children, protect children, care for children. It is horrible. So Nick Shirley, this YouTuber, he says, well, I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna start checking out these places. I'm gonna get the information from the state of Minnesota, from their website, where these monies are going, and see what we can find. So this was a little snippet of his video.
Here in Minnesota, massive fraud is taking place within the government and the Somali population. Here, this building alone, Quality Learning Center, is a daycare, yet they spelled learning wrong, and they said leering. This daycare alone in 2025 has received $1.9 million from the government. And the strange things about these childcare centers is there's no one here right now. It's midday on a weekday, and if you were to try to go inside, it's completely closed and the windows are all blacked out. No one's working, midday, children should be in here, and this place is licensed for 99 children, and this is the outside. There's no windows, no nothing, and like I said, they literally spelt the word wrong on their sign. This is open and blatant fraud taking place here inside of Minnesota. The government is complicit with this, and this is just one of the hundreds of child daycare centers here inside of Minneapolis being ran by the Somali population. It's sad that it's happening here in Minnesota, and it stinks that it's happening and it's being labeled on the Somali population. However, that's just the facts of what's happening here inside of Minnesota. $1.9 million for this daycare center that can't even spell learning right.
Yeah, they spelled learning Learing, the Leering Center for Children. Good night. I mean, it's mind-blowing. And the government continues to give them money. So here was an interview that was done with this guy named David, who has spent many years studying this stuff. He talks about going by these numerous daycare centers. He said, I've gone by these places, 100 times. Never once saw a child in this child care center. This was his interview.
Massive fraud is going on here in the state of Minnesota, especially in Minneapolis. Explain to me what's going on with the daycares.
So one of the things that I've noticed is there's an exceptional number of child care centers that are set up mostly in Minneapolis, but also in St. Paul. And I said, wow, how many kids are there in the Twin Cities? Some of them are by my office, and I would watch, and I said, well, there aren't any kids there. And I'd go to another one, there aren't any kids there, and I'd see just some Somali guys outside smoking cigarettes. So I stopped at one of them, and I said, hey, I'm just wondering, I've got a grandson who's looking for childcare, and I wonder if this might be a good facility. And they said, no, we're all full. And they had the door open, and I looked, and there were no kids. There was like a couch and a table with a couple chairs, and I said, well, are the kids out back playing, or what kind of place is this? And the guy said, you go, and he almost pushed me out the door, and then he followed me down the street to my car, and that's when I said, wait a minute, there's something going on here, and that's got to be maybe 5 years ago. This fraud is so massive. When the dust settles on this, it's going to be found to be the largest fraud in the history of the country and probably the world. It's that big. The ones that I've gotten data on, they average about $2.5 million a year, and a lot of them will say they have anywhere from 80 to 120 children. I've been to literally 40 or 50 of these childcare, and there never has been a single child at any one of them ever. Morning, afternoon, evening. Some of them say they're open till 10 o'clock at night. I go there in the morning, I go there in the afternoon, I go there at 9 o'clock at night. Nobody. There are no kids there ever.
That was the guy David, who appears on Nick Shirley's video. He was being interviewed by another person in that clip. But he's just sharing what he has experienced, what he has found. As you just do some research, it's public record. When the government gives away money like that, you can see who's getting it and go to those places. It's awful. It's unbelievable that we have people in government that are either complicit or they're clueless. You're either a crook or you're an you're an idiot, or maybe a combination. But if your job is to oversee the funds, and you're just letting it go out the door without any checks, without any balances, unbelievable. No wonder our country is in the shape it's in. And, you know, when people want to say, well, government is the answer, bigger government, you know, Zohran Mamdani, hey, we're going to take over. We're going to have a government-run grocery store here in New York City. Guarantee you that'll be a total disaster. When it's government-run anything, it's not as good as privately run. Because why? When you're privately run, you have to make sure your books balance. You don't have an unlimited amount of money that you can just keep writing checks off of. And, you know, if you're upside down, you're out of business. And so, obviously, Minnesota's got a serious, serious problem. You've been bleeding out hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer money for however many years, at least 10. Well, how long before that totally bankrupts you? And so this was a comment made by Greg Jarrett on Fox about the collapse of Minnesota as a state.
So now joining us, Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett. Greg, you know, thanks for coming on. First of all, these mayors are concerned that the projected $18 billion surplus, which has disappeared for the 2028-2029 biennium, is now replaced with a $3 billion deficit. So ultimately, taxpayers will be on the hook for this alleged rampant fraud in Minnesota, right?
Oh, it just gets worse and worse, Edward. And the sheer magnitude of this fraud, $9 billion, and it's probably more than that, is really, I think, an indictment of the utter incompetence of Tim Walz, who famously called himself a knucklehead during the VP debate, and now he's determined to prove it. He failed or refused to recognize one of the greatest ripoffs of taxpayer money ever that was happening under his nose. And, you know, together with his scandal-plagued Attorney General Keith Ellison, they are the dumb and dumber of Minnesota politics. They're both to blame because they were repeatedly warned about it. And instead of stopping all the graft, they helped the scams flourish. Walz apparently retaliated against the whistleblowers who bravely came forward. And he also tried to discredit all the reports of fraud. That's not just rank incompetence. It's intentional malfeasance. No thanks to him, but thanks to the Trump administration. 92 people have been criminally charged so far, and right. I bet there'll be a lot more.
So that was Greg Jarrett. It's just mind-blowing. It's just unbelievable, and that is taking place. And as one guy said, I saw this on social media, on X. He said, if people aren't arrested, if Tim Walz is not investigated and called on the carpet and held to account for either his being complicit with this fraud or just not doing his job, being totally negligent, a dereliction of duty, then something is seriously wrong. And we have to be a nation of laws. If you don't have laws, then anything and everything goes, and then we just turn into a nation of gangs, and whoever's, just take it back to the schoolyard. It's whoever's the biggest, toughest kid at the school, he's the one that sets the tone for everything, because there are no laws, and we become a community of gangs. It's horrific to think what is happening, and so we need to pray that this is dealt with justly, swiftly, that people are held to account, that these people who have come into our country and have ripped us off for all these millions and billions of dollars, that those people are put in prison and the rest are taken out. It's like, hey, you have abused your privilege of being here. We're kicking you out. It's just like the students that are on campus and they are fomenting all this anti-American sentiment and rhetoric. Get them out of here. Hey, you hate America and you want other people to hate America? Well, hate America from your country of origin. Don't come over here and do that. It's just like in Dearborn, Michigan. Even Bill Maher said this. Hey, when you're in America and you're burning the American flag in Dearborn, Michigan, and you're chanting death to America, well, you don't need to be here. We might have problems, obviously we do, but I don't think anybody in America who was born here wants to see America die. It's people that come in from other countries that do that death to America stuff. And as Charlie Kirk said to one college student that was pushing back on him, and Charlie said, do you love or hate America? Well, I hate America. Well, he said, well, do you have plans to leave America? No, I have no plans to leave America. I'm not going to leave America. He said, that just shows the greatness of America. You hate it, yet you wouldn't want to leave it. People, if you travel abroad, you see how even our country, even with the big messes we have as a country, it's still the greatest country to live in. I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. And God hasn't called me to live anywhere else. Obviously, if the Lord calls you to be a missionary, you have a heart for the place He calls you. And God has called me here to be a pastor, and so I have a heart for our country. And you don't want to see our country destroyed. So the difficulty that you should have when you see these news stories, that I should have, is the problem of righteous indignation, that our hearts are just there's a zeal there that says this is wrong and this activity must be punished and dealt with, and if not, our country is done. Because if you can steal from people, if you can abuse people, if you can even kill people and get away with it, and there's not an issue from the governing authorities, something is seriously wrong. Well, you're listening to Real Truth for today. Pastor Jeff Schreve here. When we come back from the break, we're going to be taking your calls, 888-589-8840. That's 888-589-8840. I'd love to hear from you what you think about this. When you see the news stories and when you see massive fraud taking place. I'm not talking about a pickpocket in Rome. I'm talking about somebody that is calculatingly stealing from the American taxpayers. What does that do to your heart? So give me a call and let's talk. 888-589-8840. That's 888-589-8840. Let me just say, it should make you righteously indignant. We'll be right back.
AFA Stream is a resource for life-changing instruction and information, a source of wholesome entertainment and relaxation, plus access to some of your favorite AFA shows. You can watch a lot of content for free, or you can become a Great Commission partner. Then you'll not only open the door to everything AFA Stream has to offer, you'll get benefits like a subscription to The Stand and some really nice exclusives. Why not get started today? It's easy. Visit stream.afa.net.
Every day, AFA offers biblical insight on issues that others aren't willing to touch, in the hopes that you'll become a world changer. That's why we're offering an in-depth worldview training course called Activate. 13 different professors teaching 18 sessions, all available online, including a printed workbook to help you apply what you've learned, and 1-year access to AFA streaming content to give you even more resources. Find out more about Activate and sign up today at activate.afa.net. Biblical marriage in America was once considered sacred, even according to the law.
Marriage itself, one man and one woman, with legal enforceable duties towards their children. It had a structure that reflected a Judeo-Christian tradition, and that was enforced in law.
Laws used to be based on religion and morality, but what about today?
Religion and morality have almost become this toxic word that you can't talk about in government, right? Anything religious and moral, that's just going to have to be the churches.
In the next AFA at Home, Walker Wildman and his guests take an in-depth look at strategies that will help restore state authority over marriage and morality.
That was the standard.
That was the norm.
Rule. That was the norm for most of the history of our country, and the court's given us an opportunity to return to that.
Catch episode 8 of AFA at Home when it hits AFA Stream on January 8th. You can watch it free for 1 week. After that, it'll be available exclusively at the Great Commission partner level. Set up your free account today at stream.afa.net.
What if healthcare could be more than bills and bureaucracy? What if it could reflect faith, foster community, and offer spiritual support? At Redeem Health Share Ministry, the mission goes beyond medical bills. It's about honoring Christ and embracing healthcare that aligns with Christian values. Redeem members share medical expenses through monthly contributions, supporting one another in a Christ-centered community. It's not insurance, it's believers helping believers through financial support and prayer. And Redeem Health Share provides freedom for members to select the doctors, hospitals, and treatments that are right for them. No networks, no restrictions, just faith-driven care. From everyday checkups to unexpected medical emergencies, Redeem offers flexible programs and encouragement rooted in Scripture. Because your healthcare should reflect your faith, not compromise it. More at redeemhealthshare.org or call 1-844-REDEEM-0.
If you'd like to contact Pastor Jeff, email pastorjeff@fromhisheart.org. Now, back to Real Truth for Today with Pastor Jeff Schreve.
Welcome back to the program. Pastor Jeff here. We've been talking about the subject of righteous indignation. That is the justified anger in response to sin and injustice and evil. When you see people being brutalized, it should make you angry. When you see people stealing right before your very eyes, there's something that you just have this sense of that is wrong. When you see wrong taking place right before your eyes, it should do something to you. It should stir up in you not an unrighteous anger, but a righteous anger. And the Bible says in Psalm chapter 7, verse 11, God is a righteous judge and a God who has indignation every day. God gets angry, and it's not sinful. It is righteous because it's righteous anger. Well, we're going to the phone lines as we've been talking about the massive fraud taking place in Minnesota, and no doubt in some other countries, but Minnesota seems to be the epicenter of all this fraud, and it's primarily taking place in the Somali community of about 100,000 people. They have figured out how to game the system and how to get all these millions and millions of dollars of government money for these fraudulent child care businesses and healthcare businesses. It's just horrible. That money that was set aside to do good and to really help people is being stolen. You know, you're stealing and put it in the maybe terms that we can all understand. It's like a blind person that is begging on the corner, and somebody is stealing all the money out of his coin purse because he can't see them. I mean, who does that? Just a sick, twisted person does that. Person that has the devil's initials carved in his heart would steal from that kind of an individual. Well, these people are doing that on a massive scale, and who's the one that gets burned? It's the money set aside for a good cause. Well, that you can't help those people anymore because all that money has been stolen. So we're going to the phone lines, 888-589-8840. I'd love to hear from you, and we have David on the line from Florida. David, welcome to Real Truth for Today.
Good morning, Pastor. You started off the morning running. You could go from coast to coast and border to border, and you could see money just going out the window, and nothing's ever done about it. No mayors, no governors, no politicians are brought to task. We sit here and we laugh. I hear people talk about these stories about Somalia and things going on, and they chuckle. It's not a laughing matter. My taxpayers' dollars are being stolen from me and from my fellow Americans, and I am sick and tired of it.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Exactly.
I'm just burning.
Yeah. And I think that is the right response, David. I mean, obviously, we're not going to go beat somebody up over it, but we need to hold people accountable. And Pam Bondi and whoever else is involved, they need to start saying these people, arrest these people. And, I hate to say it, but anybody associated with that and anybody covering for that, because Somalis, from what I was doing my research this weekend, Somalis cover for other Somalis. And so, hey, if you are involved in this fraud or you're covering for this fraud, you're out. And go back to Somalia and, have at it there. But you're not going to come here and steal from us. And obviously we have fraudsters and thieves that are, homeborn. But when you have people coming in and so much, 89% of that fraud coming from one group of immigrants, you need to get them out. That's how I feel about it.
More comment, Pastor.
Yes.
What they ought to do is the federal government should go in and every state in America should be audited. They should audit every one of them, see where they lay their books out, and let the past taxpayers know, are some money being spent usefully, or are they buying $700 hammers?
Right.
We got to know what's going on.
Yeah, I totally agree. And as one person made a post on X, they said, well, I don't want to pay my taxes if that's what my taxes are going for, which makes sense.
Amen.
If you're running a corrupt operation, well, I'm not going to fund that. And, what happens to us, if we don't pay our taxes, well, we get arrested for that, and we get charged with that. If they're stealing tax money, they seem to be getting off scot-free. So hopefully that will take a turn and justice will be served. Well, I appreciate the call, David. Thanks for listening to the program. Thanks for sharing. Well, we have Tivia from Texas on the line. Tivia, did I say that right? Is that how you pronounce your name?
It's Kivia.
Kivia, okay.
Yes.
Yes, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Good morning, Pastor.
Good morning.
So I think it's really, astonishing, right, that through this whole investigation, there's actually like private citizens, as you can see the video, David, from Nick Shirley, that it was the citizens that figured out what was going on, right? So it's kind of, how would nobody figure it out with all those same addresses going to the same place?
Right.
All the money going to the same place. No one was like, hey, maybe there's an issue here, but it's just crazy.
Yeah, and there are some Somalis that were saying, hey, this is, these people aren't, they're stealing. They're calling them out. But I know there's the fear of man, and so they want to hold together. And it's like, well, hey, I'm not going to say anything. It's not my place to say anything. I'm just going to keep my head down. But if you see that taking place, you have to call it out. And if nobody does anything about it, so that was the charge against Tim Walz, is people have made you aware of this, and you've done nothing about it. You've actually gone after the people that have made you aware of it. And, as someone pointed out, they said, well, they want to get the 100,000 votes from that Somali bloc. And so they just turn a blind eye to whatever they're doing because they want their vote. It's just sickening. And something needs to be done, definitely, and justice needs to be served. Well, I appreciate you calling in, Kivia. God bless you. We have Cassie on the line from Texas. Cassie, welcome to Real Truth for Today.
Thank you, Pastor Jeff. I don't understand how we don't have a system set up in this country, and hopefully President Trump will do something about it. I mean, because I know he would agree with this, but when you talk bad about our country and say you don't want to be here because you hate it, and especially if you're not even from here, you should be kicked out. And I mean, kicked out and televised. I mean, our country was founded. Our country was founded on Christian. Just, you know, all of the men that founded this country, they were Christians, and they founded this country on Christianity. And when you talk about the country like that, that's just common sense. Okay, well, out you go. We're not being mean. You shouldn't have said this. You know, you don't want to be here, then we're not going to allow you to be here. You talk about your country, our country, like that, out you go. And like I said, televise it. I guarantee you people will think twice before having the gall to voice that, and especially from not even being from this country. It just annoys me to no end. Something should be set in place, and I guarantee you they'll shut their mouths because they're gonna realize, wow, these people aren't just, you know, they used to all look at us as, you know, we were the nicest country, the greatest country, right. and we were, and I think there are still a lot of us that still are, but we've been too nice. It's time to get tough, and that there's nothing wrong with that. Tough love. You know, we can't be like that with y'all anymore. You've taken advantage. Right. So now we're getting tough.
Yeah. I totally agree. I think it's like, okay, no more Mr. Nice Guy. You have forfeited the kindness we have shown to you. You've taken advantage of that, and you know, it's kind of like the parent that wants to do everything for his kid, and then all of a sudden you enable that kid to be a ne'er-do-well, and you're not helping them at all. You need to hold people accountable. As John Wooden said, you know, never do for someone what they should be doing for themselves. And so with the Somali community, not only do you have a huge, 89% or 90%, whatever it is, you have this huge percentage that are ripping the government off for millions, billions of dollars. Then you have another huge amount of Somalis that are on government assistance. So it's like, hey, we're gonna get whatever you have that's offered for people. We're gonna somehow rig it to where we get that money. And what does that mean? That means the people that actually are in need, that are genuine, needy folks, they don't get it because there's only so much pie. And if all the pie goes to the fraudsters, then there's no more pie left for those who are actually in need. Yeah, it is maddening, it is sickening, it is wrong, and it needs to be addressed ASAP. And those who are participating in the fraud, from the insiders to the fraudsters to the actual recipients of the money, all those people ought to be held accountable, and they ought to be prosecuted to the nth degree. And the others that are a part of that, either silent, complicit through their silence, they ought to be kicked out. It's like, okay, you didn't necessarily drive the getaway car, but you knew who was in the car, and you didn't say anything about it, and we're kicking you out of the country. Go back to Somalia, where it's so wonderful, and you can live your life there. So I appreciate that, Cassie. Yeah, I get fired up about that too, because I'm a very black and white thinker, and what is right, what is wrong, and what is wrong needs to be condemned and said that is wrong, and you need to right the ship. So God bless you for calling in. We have Henry on the line from Ohio. Henry, welcome to Real Truth for Today.
Thank you, Pastor. I just wanted to make a comment that all these Smallies and Tim Waltz or whoever else is involved, not only are they stealing, but they are causing the children to stumble by keeping the funds that was supposed to take care of them. Mm-hmm. And we know what Matthew 18:6 says about that.
Yes. Well, it's terrible. Yeah, as I said, you only have so much money. and you only have so much pie. And if they take all the pie and give it to the fraudsters, then there's no pie left for those who are truly in need. And, you present, as Tim Walz does, you present to the public, we have these great programs taking place in our state to help all these people in need, but then the people in need never get it, or, get very little of it, because all the crooks take it. And so as Jesus, you have made my house shall be called a house of prayer. You have made it a den of thieves and robbers. And the 8th commandment says, you shall not steal. And taking something that doesn't belong to you is stealing, and the Lord doesn't look favorably upon that. So God bless you, brother. Thanks for calling in. We have Donna on the line from Oklahoma. Donna, welcome to Real Truth for Today.
Hey, thank you so much. So my comment for you here today, this morning, is the anger that we have should not be necessarily towards the Somalis. So I want you to give real thought into the anger should be to the people in this country that are allowing it. So we have elected officials that we have to represent us as America. And if those people are letting us down by allowing these Somalis, as we are going to call them from Minnesota, if we're going to allow people to come in and go against our laws, anger should be to those that are not upholding our laws. Does that make sense?
Well, wouldn't you also be angry at the people that are stealing the money?
Well, yes, but who's allowing it? If there's no checks and balances, isn't that not our government and our officials that we have elected?
Well, for sure. But, not every Somali is stealing. And so those that aren't stealing, it's still on the person actually doing it. If you keep your door unlocked at night and you have this kind of unwritten, hey, you can come and take whatever you want, it's still wrong for somebody to do that. So I think there's enough righteous indignation to go around, and there needs to be accountability. That's the key, Donna, and so I'd agree with you. Those people need to be held accountable. Those who are charged with minding the store didn't do it. Well, thanks for listening to Real Truth for Today. We're out of time. You can reach me, Pastor Jeff, at fromhisheart.org, Pastor Jeff at fromhisheart.org. Go out today, shine for Christ, and share what great things the Lord has done for you, and God will use you as His witness. God bless you.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.